topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Who is January Jones? She is not a young, beautiful, talented actress on Mad Men. She is not an older, gorgeous, exotic dancer from the Johnny Carson Show. She is an author, and she wrote Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. She is a reality TV golf personality with world high-stakes golf televised on HDNet. She is a humorist and winologist expert. She is your featured host today on January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and listen to Ms. Jones with her eclectic roster of guests as you learn life's lessons. These stories plus sharing equals success. Welcome, and remember, beware, because you are entering the no whining world of January Jones.
Hello, I'm January Jones, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast today. Now, to my listeners, let me ask you a question. Can you imagine what it would be like being able to write a book that actually makes a difference for your readers? Think what it would be like to generate 6 figures in revenue for your writing. Tell me, would you like to meet someone named the Author Incubator? Yes, you heard me right, incubator. Have you ever wished you could meet someone who is a publisher and can help you write your book and help you to live your dreams? Are you ready to make some big changes in your life? If you can answer yes or maybe to any of the questions I've asked, then you are in the right place. And I'd like to welcome you to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So now it's time to rest, relax, go get some wine and cheese, and join me in the no wine zone. Now let me tell you about my guest today. My guest is the founder of the Author Incubator and the creator of the different process for writing a book. In 2018, the Author Incubator was ranked number 275 on the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies and number 60 on Entrepreneur Magazine's Entrepreneur 360. Our guest today has been helping people free their inner author since 1994, helping over 1,000 authors in transformation write, publish, and promote their books. It is my pleasure today to welcome to the show Angela Lauria. Hi, Angela. How are you doing?
Oh, I am very happy to be here. I'm fantastic.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I know you've been on the show before, but it's so nice to have you on the show where I actually can see you. Before our shows were all audio.
Yeah, I know. It was about 10 years ago, and we were still using free conference call and TalkShoe and talk radio, all the olden technologies. Now we're all TV magic all the time. So,
before we start our actual podcast visit, can you share with me and with our listeners a little bit about how the pandemic impacted your business and how it impacted your career?
Well, a lot. We had an events business. So we had 2 locations. One was the Author Castle, and it was a 16,000 square foot castle where people would come and write their book in 3 days. And the other was called the Author Academy, and it was 20,000 square feet in the heart of downtown DC and Georgetown. And that's where people would come. We had a podcast studio, a TV filming studio, and an event space. And so we would do marketing workshops, and then we would have our authors come and we'd prepare a marketing package for them. So we were doing about 6 events a month.
Wow.
And close to 2 million a month in revenue from our 6 events. And overnight, bam, the tap was shut off.
Mm-hmm.
So our last event was very funny. We had like 10 authors there on day 1, and then like 7 on day 2, and like 4 on day 3. And that was March, I think 15th, March 12th, something of 2020. So they just started trickling out on early flights home, and that was it. We shut the doors of the buildings, and by the end of that year, we had the castle was a lease purchase, so we had $2 million down on the castle that we just had to wave at and walk away from.
Oh my gosh.
It was rough. And then the academy, we had just completed $1 million renovation. That we funded, and that was about $100,000 a month rent. So we had to waive that. We had paid about $1 million to get out of the lease. Plus we paid $1 million in renovation. So $4 million up in smoke in seconds. That was super fun. And then we did what everybody did and converted to a virtual environment. So we do all the same stuff. We just now do it online instead of bringing people in person.
Okay. And how long did it take for you to make the transition so that you could continue your work, but to continue online as we all had to do?
Yeah, well, we had clients that were scheduled for the first week of April. So within 2 weeks, we had everything up online.
Oh, wow. That's fast.
It was painful.
Painful.
Everyone was using the word pause. I was working 24 hours a day, and then I was like, when is the pausing? I'm not getting any of the pausing. There was no pausing.
No pause. Oh.
No, we had, multiple moves, and we had to rebuild everything on the fly. And, it was good, but it needed a lot of tweaking. We'd done those live events so many times. It was a science. Like, I knew every step I took was orchestrated to perfection. And my conversion rates at my live events were upwards of 80%. And I've never come anywhere close to that online, because I can't even get the show up rates. Like, when people signed up to come in person, they came and they would convert, and our events were magical. Now my conversion rates are more like 20%.
Oh, wow.
Registrations. People don't show up. It's very hard when you're locked in a castle. Very easy to get you to pay attention to me. But when you're at your house and you sign up to write your book, and the kids and the dogs and the internet outages and whatever else, it's much harder to get people's attention, I find, for me online.
Well, I would think so. What are your plans for going back to the castle? Is that in the future, or?
We're working on a new castle. So we're working on actually a move to England.
Oh.
So that's something. We looked at Ireland. We've looked at another couple destination. So people that are writing their book as like destination travel. And we've done a couple destination retreats that have been smaller. It's a little like people seem much more open to canceling now. I think people used to feel bad about canceling, and now people don't feel bad. Like, we had somebody cancel because like her 30-year-old daughter had a doctor's appointment and needed a ride. Like, it was like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, I know. This whole thing has been quite a difficult thing for many of us who are trying to communicate, and but some of us have gotten better. I call it the pandemic pause. And some people have felt that it's been good because it's taken them back, and they've been able to reevaluate and regroup, so to speak. But actually, I miss the old days, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do. And we've tried to like
Mhm.
just pretend it didn't happen. And it's not, people are different. I don't think you can just go back. Well, for me, I have found my experiences. I can't just go back and do those old events.
Yeah.
Our old castle is now an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, we'll just rent it and we'll do an event just like we did at the castle. But it just didn't have the same
Oh gosh.
charm.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break right now and hear about one of my books.
Oh no, I
And
hope I wasn't just whining. I'm in the no wine zone. January Jones, did I just whine? Oh,
yeah, you were my lead-in and you didn't realize it. No, seriously not. Actually, I'm very excited because Thou Shalt Not Whine has just now come out an audiobook, and I'd like our listeners to hear about it.
Lately, there's a whining epidemic in our world. People are even whining about whining. Are you sick and tired of listening to everyone whining all the time? So was January Jones, the author of Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment that reached #1 at Amazon.com. Ms. Jones based her book on a survey of the top 10 things that people whine about at all ages and all stages of life. January is a success coach that can tell you how to help others. When you buy Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, you'll find out what people whine about and how to stop them from whining. This is the perfect gift book to give or get for any occasion. Thou Shalt Not Whine was voted the best gift to be given anonymously for those special people in your life. Ms. Jones is an internationally known author in the style of Irma Bombeck, specializing in housewife humor with her book being published in Korea and China. You can find Thou Shalt Not Whine at Amazon.com.
Welcome back to the No Wine Zone with our guest, Angela Lauria, who is definitely not a whiner because Angela is a winner. Angela, before we begin and go into the podcast, could you share with our listeners how they can contact you and your website and all the information they'll need?
great. Yes, absolutely. So you can go to Difference Press, and it's difference like make a difference. So differencepress.com. You'll find some free classes on how to write a book. All of my books are free there, and lots of other yummy information if you are thinking about writing a book to help grow your business.
Wonderful. And that information for our listeners is at the bottom of the screen. So write it down and contact Angela if you thought you ever wanted to write a book. And let's face it, everyone has thought that at one time or another. It's a pretty common thing to do. I know I wrote my first book when I was 50 years old. So I was definitely a late bloomer, but what an amazing accomplishment. It's hard to write a book that makes a difference. And how do you coach people to get them to that place where they can achieve that?
It's such a good question. You know, I've done hundreds of podcasts and no one has ever asked me that question. And
Really?
the thing is that most people, and this is normal, most people want to write about themselves or what they think is interesting.
Mhm.
And in order to make a difference, you have to actually connect with an audience. Now, something about you or something you think is interesting can connect with an audience. But
Mhm.
what I spend the most time on, especially at the beginning of the book writing process, is who is reading this? Why did they pick this up? What about your story is going to matter to someone else? It's
Mhm.
not just a journal. Like writing can be very therapeutic, but I don't help people write their journals. I help people like write a book that someone's going to hopefully read and get to know them and understand their message. And so it's that connection point between the reader and the writer that's the key to making a difference.
Okay. And yet, what I'm intrigued by the work you do is you're aiming to help people put out a message that will start a movement, which is what I tried to achieve with Thou Shalt Not Whine. And you talk about 10 steps that you can take to start a movement. Could you share some of those with us?
I can actually. So I mentioned my books were on my website. So if you go to the website, you will find it. But those steps are in this book. It's called The Incubated Author. And what people often do wrong when they are trying to start a movement is, and you actually did a great job of this. It's even in the title of your book. They're afraid to have an enemy. They're afraid to pick sides. They want to make everyone happy. And so instead of saying, thou shalt not whine, they'll say something like, everyone should be more kind. Everyone who's like against kindness, like there's no enemy there. And so when you can clearly define a position, that the way I explain this is a reasonable person could disagree with, that a reasonable person could be on the other side. That is a huge key to starting a movement. And a lot of people are afraid to do that, especially women. Most of my clients are women, about 90% women. My average age is 50 and I'm 50. So that was when you wrote your first book. So, you know, women of a certain age, seasoned chickens, I'm told. We're not spring chickens anymore. We're seasoned chickens. We're not fresh apples. We're, I don't know, warm apple pie or something. But we have been taught to be nice and not rock the boat and not make waves and really, frankly, not stand out. And writing a book that people read and certainly starting a movement is about being willing to stand out, being willing to take a stand.
Yeah, in a position. And you're right. It's for a lot of women, it's a difficult thing to do. That's why most of us wait till we're 50 to make the big move. But of course, one thing that goes with being older is you do have a little more experience and you have a heck of a lot more confidence, because I figure once you get through 50 years, the next 50 will be a piece of cake.
That's what I'm hoping for. But I think there's also, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I'm sure I'll get the science here wrong. But I do think there's something biologically that happens with menopause, after menopause, the coming into the wise woman self. A lot of your resources, if you think about it when you're 20, a lot of your resources biologically are going towards making a baby in various ways, like being attractive, there's a lot of effort in picking out outfits, getting your hair done, doing your makeup. And it's not that I don't do those things now at 50, because I sure do. But it's less effort with 30 years of practice. And also it's less of a priority. Like, I'm not trying to get pregnant right now. That's not the goal. So it's about, what is my wisdom? What is my legacy? And there's almost, it feels like I said, not a doctor, but there's almost a biological drive to share your knowledge for many women of a certain age.
Yeah, you know, I think you're right, because I think in general, most women, are the ones I know, cultivate a large network of girlfriends. And we spend a lot of time networking with our dear friends back and forth. And it's about children. But then as you gradually grow older, you get interested in other things. And it's so wonderful to be able to reach out to a bigger audience. And now, of course, through what we're doing with Zoom and podcasts, it's a very doable thing. And so once you write your book, you can find an audience these days. Don't you think it's much easier?
Much easier. Oh my God. When I started in publishing in 1994.
Oh, wow.
I remember one of the first authors I worked for had a 2-car garage, but one whole side of the garage was filled with books.
Yeah.
We used to have to order, but we would have to guess how many we would sell.
I know.
Put them in our garage. And then he had, like, it wasn't a minivan, but it was like a station wagon, because he would always have a box of books in his car. And then he was selling books on the road, going to events, trying to sell these books. It's a whole lot easier with Amazon. Let me tell you, print on demand is a big game changer.
Oh, yeah. Print on demand has just changed the industry. And it's such a brilliant concept. I mean, all my books are at Amazon, of course. And now I'm finding that this audio market is just exploding. And, I think 4 of my books now are audio, and 2 more are on the track. What are your thoughts about this audio explosion taking place?
And especially the last 2 years, we used to see about 10% of our authors doing audiobooks, and it's now well over 60%.
Oh,
I
wow.
used to recommend it as like a nice to have. I think I even described it that way, like, oh, as a bonus, if you
Yeah.
would like to, like
Yeah.
as an extra. Now I tell them it's required. I'm like, within the first year of your book coming out, you should do the audiobook.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's also been made easier because not every author is meant to narrate their book. It's a lot of work to do the audio for your book, but there are great narrators out there now, and there's lots of affordable business models. You could do it as a revenue share.
Yeah.
You can hire an actor, so it doesn't have to be you, but getting the book out there on audiobook is key.
Well, I didn't realize it, but I was way ahead of my time because I did my first Kennedy book, and I myself did it as an audio. And wow, that was so much work. It was very exciting. I loved doing it. It was something new. But you're right. Right now, my next 4 books I have hired.
Smart woman.
A wonderful narrator, and she's doing all my books, and it's been a delight. Speaking of books and Who Killed Kennedy, we're going to hear about my books.
Let me ask you a question. Are you still wondering who killed Kennedy? Over 50 years later, the assassination is still a mystery. It is unfinished business for our country. Now, get ready for a theory that you've never heard before, but will make more sense than any other conspiracy theory that you've ever heard in the past. January Jones speaks the unspeakable in her book, Jackie, Ari, and Jack, the tragic love triangle connecting Jackie and Aristotle Onassis romantically prior to JFK's assassination. Did you know that Ari was Jackie's guest in the White House during the JFK funeral? He was the only non-family member who was invited by Jackie to stay there during the funeral. Aristotle Onassis was one of the wealthiest men in the world, with the means, the motive, and the money to order an assassination that was the perfect crime of the last century. Ari needed class, and Jackie needed cash. They were perfect for each other. Now, what is Camelot? It is but another tragic love triangle. Jackie, Ari, and Jack is available at JanuaryJones.com, Amazon.com, and audiobooks.com, read by Ms. Jones.
Welcome back with my wonderful guest, Angela. Angela, one of your talking points is how to generate 6-figure revenues by writing a book. And what are some tips you can give to our listeners if they have an idea and they're thinking about writing a book?
Yeah. So when it comes to something like creative nonfiction or romance novels or science fiction, the best way to generate revenue with those books is to write lots of books and write quickly. The best thing you can do is work on your writing skills, because with romance novels or sci-fi, you want to be putting out 4 to 15 a year. You really need to crank those books out almost like extended magazine, like you're having a magazine or a serial, the way Charles Dickens would serialize his books, and they would be 25 cents in the grocery store when you would check out. So when you are a nonfiction writer, and when it's prescriptive nonfiction, how to business books, relationship books, you have a huge advantage to generate revenue through coaching or consulting that comes from readers.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that we teach our authors to do is to build lead magnets into the book and to use the book as a lead magnet so that people who find you through your book will then know about your consulting services or your coaching services. For most of our authors, somewhere between 24 and 96 clients a year, the average is about 48, will generate about $500,000 in revenue.
Okay.
Now, the rest of the revenue that they get from selling books, which most of our authors make about $10,000 a year on their books. I always say that's vacation money. That's not, you're not retiring on the book sales.
Yeah.
We're using the book sales, and all of your marketing can be on marketing the books, being on podcasts, having your own podcast, doing TikTok, doing social media, going to trade shows. You can just advertise your books. And the thing about advertising books is nobody's like offended. It's whatever. It's $15. It's not, I get you for free. It's $15. Nobody feels like you're shoving a $50,000 swimming pool or $100,000 swimming pool at them. So it's easy to get speaking appearances and podcast appearances and other PR opportunities as an author, but then having a way to capture those leads and having email sequences and other ways to communicate about your consulting and coaching services. That's the key. A small percentage of your readers can generate a huge portion of your revenue from the book.
The book is the stepping stones, actually, for most careers these days. And your beginning tip about writing is so critical. You know, you can always think about it, but guess what? You have to sit down. We used to say pen to paper, but now hand to computer.
Yeah, I always say button seat.
Yeah, right.
Button the seat. Book's not going to write itself.
Yeah, and I always stress to our listeners that are interested in writing their book, just put it out there. Don't worry about editing and all of the finer points. That'll be taken care of before it's published. What you have to do is let it flow, let it come through the universe and come through you and share it. Angela, explain to our listeners, one of your talking points is difference press. And how does that work?
Yeah, but I want to jump back to flow state and then I'll talk about difference press. But so one of the things I teach is hacking into that flow state. So we want our authors to write 80% of the book with God, the universe, whatever, as their co-pilot. So that some of it might be a slog. We'll give you 20% that's going to just be really hard, ripping your hair out. But at least 80% of the time, you should almost feel like the universe is working through you. This is stuff that you read it back and you're like, this is good. Who wrote this?
Yeah. I've actually had that happen.
It's such a great experience. And to me, like a lot of people say, I know I've hit on something as a writer if I cry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is a thing. For me, it's like when I read it back and I'm impressed by it, and I'm like, oh, I don't even remember writing this. That's how I know that I'm aligned and I'm writing the right book. So we have a little process for this. So one piece of it is having the right environment.
Okay.
So if your chair isn't comfortable or your computer screen is cracked or anything that is going to distract from you being able to possibly be in that flow state. For one of our authors, the first couple of weeks she worked with us, all she did was clean out her office. There was so much clutter. And I kept saying to her, this is working on your book. Sometimes people say like, oh, I'm going to clean my office after I finish my book. And then they don't finish their book and they don't clean their office.
Right.
Not everybody needs a clean space to work. So I call this focusing your author mojo. What do you need to be productive? For some people, it's a dark room. For some people, it's a beautiful view. They're both good. I don't have any judgment, but anything that is distracting you, fix that first before you do an outline, before you start writing, knowing your author mojo. And a lot of times I'll talk to people about, how do you get your taxes done? How do you, if you had to do a big PowerPoint for, I don't know, Bill Gates, how would you do that? Because we don't want to invent a new way of working. We want to know what already works for you. So a lot of times people think, I'm going to develop a new habit for writing a book. Develop a new habit later. What are the habits that work for you now?
Yeah, the message here is get it done.
Yeah, exactly. Then we can take a productivity course or something. But so that's the first thing that, go ahead.
I was just going to share with you, for my last birthday, one of my daughters gave me a session with a psychic down here in Sarasota. And I just had it a week ago. It was quite incredible. And one of the things that came through as a message was that a lot of your inspiration, a lot of your spirituality, your message, a lot of things will come through in dreams. And I think that this was a new concept. And when I look back on it, it actually has happened for me. I have had dreams that have affected what I've written. But I think sometimes people think it's all so rigid and black and white. And I don't think they're accepting of how the flow of the universe works.
Yeah. And, it doesn't matter what you think of as God or the universe. Like, you can also just think of it as, like, there have been books written about flow state. So it's whatever you want to call it. To me, it feels like God, but when you're in the zone and it's just coming through you, I think we've all had that experience where it was easy. And that's not to say every single thing about writing a book is going to be easy, but I'm telling you, the first draft is supposed to be the easy part. So that's where that message should be so clear in you, that you're just like a channel. And I'm sure you could think of that from a science perspective, right, or a religious perspective. But for me, it's like, let's get everything aligned so that writing is a joy. I tell my authors, you have to write your book from a place of joy and ease, not because I care if it's joyful and easy, but because that's how we get the best books. So that energy that goes into the book is what's going to come out for the readers. And if you're on fire and excited and can't wait to write, the readers will be excited to read. If you're like ripping your hair out and trying to get every word right, we'll feel that too as the reader.
It's interesting because that's exactly what I did with two of my books. I took 20 of the most priceless personalities who had been on my show, and we had their interviews transcribed into one of the two of the easiest books I've ever written. Have you ever met someone who was unforgettable? Someone who has touched your heart and soul? People who have faced difficult problems? People who have struggled to find solutions? People who fearlessly shared their stories? People who have not only informed you, but inspired you. People who have priceless personalities. I have been fortunate to host an internet radio talk show called January Jones Sharing Success Stories, and it has been my privilege to interview hundreds of guests. My guests have shared their stories, their struggles, their secrets, and their successes in their own words. In this book, we're talking about people dealing with problems such as incest, molestation, runaway kids, child abuse, drug abuse, polygamy, unemployment, scandal, and starting over. Then there are my guests dealing with difficult physical struggles such as blindness, cancer, and birth defects that are beyond traumatic. My guests have all been exciting, eclectic, and energizing. They have amazed, amused, and even astonished me. I have adored getting to meet them, and I adore sharing them with you.
Attention all listeners. Priceless Personalities, Success Stories Shared by January Jones, Volume 2 is now available at Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle editions. You'll be able to meet 10 amazing people who will be sharing their own personal stories with all their struggles, successes, and solutions, sprinkled with lots of humor and hope. Priceless Personalities features a teenager who becomes one of the famous Supremes from Motown, a nurse who as a humorist helps people to heal, an inspiring laughter yoga instructor, a mother dealing with the loss of a child, an incredible motivational speaker, a woman who married 5 times, a gifted paranormal nurse, a wise economist, a funny female humorist, along with an older man sharing his sweet childhood in the Deep South. January's guests are all amazing and amusing. You will never forget meeting them. Go to Amazon.com for your own priceless experience.
Welcome back with one of my favorite priceless personalities. And you know, Angela, I'm probably going to take this interview, have it transcribed, and you may be in my next book.
I'm excited for that.
That's great. What is one of the biggest mistakes that first-time authors make, and how can they avoid it?
I think this one's easy. Most people start by writing. They get an idea, they get a burst of inspiration, they start writing. Usually people tell me they've got 20 pages, and then that manuscript never gets finished. It goes into their hard drive, it goes into a folder, it's on the someday list or the to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
And what I call this is writing yourself into a corner.
Okay.
So you get the idea, you're super excited about it, you start by writing, but you don't really know where you're going. You don't know why you're writing it. You don't know who you're writing it for. You don't know what the outcome of the book is or the conclusion. You don't know how you'll market it. You don't know how you'll make money from it. And your brain, which is a very smart device, is like, this isn't a good use of our time. It might look like confused or procrastinating, but really your brain is like, if we watch Netflix, we know we'll relax and have fun. If we do this book, we don't know what we're getting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what I always say is start with the end in mind. I love what Stephen Covey says. He says, when climbing the ladder of success, make sure it's leaned against the right building. It's brilliant, right?
Yes.
Or any building. Like if you start with writing, you don't even have a ladder leaned against a building. You just got a ladder, like, I don't know, on the roof of your car. We don't know where it's going. Mm-hmm. So really taking the time to say, what am I doing here? Am I building a media empire? Am I building a speaking career? Am I building a consulting career? Am I hoping to get large advances from a publisher? There's no right and wrong answers, but knowing what are you going to do with this book? What's the reason for it is a much better place to start. And then constructing an outline so you know everything you're going to write before you start putting it down. So if I was doing your personalities book from your interviews, we wouldn't just pick one random interview and write it up. We would say, what's the story? What are the 20 stories we want to include here? Which are the people we want to feature? How can we break it up into different sections? Mm-hmm. And so like thinking through, where are we going with this and why are we doing it isn't natural to everyone. And especially creative people and writers very often don't think that way. So solution to this, if you are not strategical, is a coach. Exactly. So if you're not naturally strategic or linear, that doesn't mean you're faulty. Yeah. That could mean you're an even better writer, but it does mean you want to have a coach or a consultant who's helping you think through, what's the strategy here? How am I going to execute it? Lean into your strengths and know where it's not a strength for you. I'm not doing my own taxes. I'm not producing my own podcast. Know the things that you need to hire help for, and then you can really flourish in your own strengths.
And that, my dear listeners, is why Angela is such an incredible coach And that is why I've had her here on the show. And I've been so excited to share her with you. And go to her website if you want to have someone who can really inspire you and get you there. Thank you so much, Angela, for coming to visit today. And we'll have you back again for sure.
I'm excited for visit number 3. I think you get an award, right?
Well, I haven't quite given out jackets, but we could do that.
Great. I'm in. Thanks for having me. Fun conversation.
Okay, my dear listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our time together. We've tried to be informative, and Angela has certainly been inspiring today. Next Tuesday live, I'm looking forward to welcoming another guest. Be sure to sign on to my website. And I also want to share my 79-year-old thought for the day. It is, common sense is like deodorant. The people who need it the most never use it. So now, thank you for entering the No Whine Zone with us. And please share our stories and our show with everyone you know. Remember, you need to stop whining, and then you need to start smiling, just like Angela does all the time. And if that doesn't work, then you can just start eating chocolate, lots and lots of chocolate. Dear friends, take care and stay safe until we meet again.
We want to thank you for listening to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. Always remember Ms. Jones' personal mantra, if you can think it, you can do it. That's what all of our guests have done with their lives, and so can you. You are the ultimate success coach in your own life. All you need to do will be to start sharing your own story with your family and friends. We hope that our guest stories will encourage you to explore an equation in your future that will combine your creativity plus connecting with others will enable you to be successful too. Always remember, your passion plus your purpose will equal prosperity as you explore the wonderful world of January Jones.